Okay, folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier with the Mike's Not So Instant Movie Review. 2 nights ago, I saw She Said. Carey Mulligan leads an all-star cast, of which others I can't really remember the names, except interesting that some people are playing themselves in this movie. Ashley Judd, most notably. And you might be wondering why, what is this movie, She Said? Well, it's kind of like recent history, basically. Harvey Weinstein case is the focal point, although there are allusions to other big cases of sexual harassment in the workplace. And this strikes close to the field that I'm trying to get into as much as possible. I have maybe a toe or two in the world of entertainment. And so I'm kind of defensive about the world of entertainment when people just put out things like saying, oh, Hollywood has an agenda, or these Hollywood types. And I always, ask these assholes that use this term, this vague term of Hollywood. What do you mean by Hollywood? Do you mean the city of Los Angeles? Do you mean the Hollywood district of Los Angeles? Because you know that most films, many films, not most, but many films and television shows are actually made in Georgia. So when you're saying Hollywood, does that also include the state of Georgia in the United States? Just start watching your goddamn television shows, your Netflix and chills, and at the end of a lot of shows, you'll see that Georgia fucking, I think it's a peach, filmed in the state of Georgia. So people throw around this topic, this term of Hollywood, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, as usual. They're just ignorant, and they say these things. But in this case, it is a horrible, god-awful story. This Harvey Weinstein ruined people's lives. Rose McGowan among them. Rose says basically her story, if you don't know, is that she was drugged and raped by Weinstein. I believe that's the case from her perspective. I believe they had an out-of-court settlement. And Weinstein, who I believe he and his brother were the top dogs, but I think Harvey kind of took over, were the charge of Miramax Pictures that brought us all a lot of great films that we all enjoyed, Pulp Fiction and so forth. Miramax was just, especially in the 90s and into the 2000s, just a great place for movies to come out of. But the dark side, the undercurrent, was this Harvey Weinstein harassing great actresses like Ashley Judd and who was the lady that did Frida? You know what I'm talking about. Salma Hayek. They both had really horrible stories. Neither one, I guess, would sleep with Weinstein, they say. So he kind of forced them to do a lesbian scene together in the movie Frida. So this guy was just very abusive. But this movie, She Said, more or less, or more, takes the side of the two reporters, I believe, for the New York, I want to say the New York Post. I going to say the New York Times. I think it was the New York Times. Sorry. I get my New York fucking newspapers mixed up because I don't live there. But New York Times, I believe. The two female reporters, they're both kind of mothers. They both have children. So they're dealing with motherhood and relationships. And now they've got the story of the year on their hands. And they're trying to collaborate their sources, whatever the term is. And they're trying to get to the bottom of this filth. And, and they have a situation where a lot of women are willing to speak, but some of them have signed NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and I'll get to that in a second. And, some of them are afraid because they're afraid that they'll get killed or whatever, or their reputations will be smeared if they speak against Weinstein because he's such a powerful man. So, basically, they have all these women, they want to talk, but they don't want to share their names, which doesn't give credibility to the article. And so the female reporters have the attitude or the thought that if these women will all jump together, then we can have our article here and expose this stuff. But if none of them are willing to put their name on it, then the article is just going to fade away. And this also shows the corruption of the system, the compliance, if you would. And we've even seen interviews where some of the people that worked, Tarantino and Matt Damon and so forth, and probably Ben Affleck, they all worked very hand in hand with Weinstein. They all probably know more than what they're saying, maybe, allegedly. But they keep their fucking mouths shut because they like that million dollars. And then the machine of society that puts these pedestals underneath the celebrities' assholes just keeps the machine going. So it's partly your fault too. So what else? These NDAs, okay, non-disclosure agreements. They get into that pretty good in this movie. Very good movie. This is the type of movie that I enjoy. She said, because this is a thinking person's movie. This is not just, let's throw some fucking special effects on the screen for 2.5 hours and numb your mind into oblivion and send you on your merry way and then come back and see 30 more of these fucking movies. This is a movie of its time that's talking about real issues, and intelligent people go to see movies like this. Okay? So, what else? These non-disclosure agreements. Now, for those of you that are subscribed to Mike Messier YouTube channel regulars, you've probably, perhaps, seen my wrestling rants, my pro wrestling rants. The last couple of years, they've taken on a very serious edge, as I've discussed the WWE's, work in Saudi Arabia, where the civilians, especially women, are basically oppressed. I've discussed Vince McMahon's funding of Donald J. Trump. They're good friends, and McMahon basically more or less was his top funder in 2016. So I've discussed all these serious topics, and people, who just blow off wrestling as just a silly carnival sideshow or just some cartoon, or they don't know what's going on. They don't realize the money that's involved in pro wrestling, and also the power that the wrestling promotion has over its fans, and the money that they fueled into Trump. I mean, you could say that a wrestling promoter basically made your fucking 2016 president, whether you want to admit it or not, John Q. asshole. So let's go to these NDAs. Why do I bring it up? Because no mention of Vince McMahon in this movie. None whatsoever. No mentions of wrestling, none whatsoever. There are Trump references. However, I couldn't help but have my mind wander to this recent exploration of Vincent Kennedy McMahon's non-disclosure agreements that essentially were revealed recently, last couple of months, to the WWE board. Now, of course, Vince McMahon owns most of WWE. He's like, I think, an 80% owner. But in any event, there was enough stuff there that they revealed all these NDAs for millions of dollars with, about a dozen women or so, more or less, a dozen women. And of course, all these NDAs are on the sexual nature. And so we don't know what Vince did. There was no criminal charges against Vince, as far as I know. There was a allegation back in the 80s from the first female WWF referee of rape. And all these NDAs that were coming out just recently, this calendar year. And of course, all the idiot WWE fans, the McIdiot marks, or the idiot McMarks, as I say, continue to support WWE. They just get their wrestling dicks hard because Triple H has now got the book, got the pencil, and they just ignore this moral depravity and integrity issues. They just ignore it. The wrestling fans, like yourselves, ignore these things because you have no fucking integrity. So there you go. So all these wonderful thoughts are in my fucking head as I'm watching this She Said movie. Now, I do like the title of the movie too, because if you were a Harvey Weinstein supporter, he's now in jail, by the way, probably will die there, there's really not a whole lot of defense for Harvey Weinstein in this film. So I do like the fact that they're kind of playing off that term, he said, she said, because if somebody out there wanted to make a Harvey Weinstein sympathetic film, they could call it He Said, or whatever the fuck. But this was, from lack of a better term, the female point of view, the victim's point of view. And we talk about that too, things like victim culture and shit like that, or, people. But in this case, it really is because victims, because they are the victims of this guy pushing his weight around, kind of literally and figuratively, and, bullying people and threatening people and so forth. Interesting in this film that they don't really show Harvey Weinstein's face. They do show Harvey Weinstein entering the New York Times. I believe it's the Times, not the Post office, and yelling, but they don't show his face. when they first showed the profile of the character Weinstein, I thought maybe Jon Favreau would be playing Weinstein. I just kind of made that up. I said, oh, this would be who's going to play Weinstein? You know, maybe Jon Favreau. But I was not him. It was some other guy. And they never showed Weinstein's face, which is kind of interesting. I think this movie, I recently listened to a podcast series, The Shadow Girls Murders, which is about serial killers, murder victims. You know, this creep killed all these women. Most of them were prostitutes, and they did this whole podcast series, The Shadow Murders Girls, whatever the fuck. Good podcast. But basically, they're trying to take the perspective of the victims, not the assailant. And I think that's interesting because if you look at our culture, especially with these school shootings, some of these assholes who do these school shootings are doing them in order to get their name out there, to get some type of weird fame. And if the press, ourselves, if we were stop being so fascinated by the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world, and maybe just more fascinated with the registered nurse who works at our local hospital who's helping people stay alive or be more comfortable in their parting days, if we did things like that, if we were this type of society like that, then we would be better off. You might be wondering, why am I shaking a razor? Because I'm getting my bag ready to go into the gym. I'm going to take a nice hot shower. I'm going to shave. I do have shaving cream and so forth. So that's why I'm carrying a razor. I just don't do this for fun, okay? What else? So, good movie. I wish I could tell you all the names of all the wonderful actors in this thing. One thing that was I was a tinge confused on is we hear the voice of Gwyneth Paltrow, who was kind of the princess of Miramax in the late 90s, you know, that Weinstein apparently tried to have sex with. She would not allow that to happen. That did not happen. But she, I guess, people knew that Weinstein had a thing for her. He had a thing for pretty much every woman he worked with. But, you know, Gwyneth was able to get away. She's kind of not done a whole lot of big movies lately, except for the Iron Man movies. And she's done her whole, you know, vaginal care products or whatever the fuck it is. And she was featured in this film as a subject matter. And then at some point, she actually, her voice appears in the movie. And then there's a scene with someone talking to the reporters. There's a person walking near me now. I don't like that. There's a scene with the reporter. Of course, they have to go right next to me. So there's a scene where this this character is talking to the reporters, and I was trying to figure out, is this supposed to be Gwyneth Paltrow or not? Because it wasn't the actual Gwyneth Paltrow, unlike the Ashley Judd that was in the film earlier. This was just another actress. I didn't know if this actress was playing Gwyneth Paltrow or not. She looked kind of like Gwyneth Paltrow, a tinge older, no offense. But I didn't know if that was supposed to be Gwyneth or not. And in that case, if it was supposed to be Gwyneth Paltrow, it's really confusing because you've got certain actresses like Ashley Judd who are in this thing playing themselves, you know, just 5 years ago. Good for Ashley Judd for doing that. But this Gwyneth, I don't know if this character was supposed to be Gwyneth or somebody else. And maybe I dozed off or maybe I got confused. I don't know. I thought I was paying attention. So I think this is a good movie. The theater that I was in Massachusetts was pretty filled on a Friday night for this thing, which is nice to see. And look, if you're going to shit all over Hollywood like people like to do, Hollywood, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about when they're shitting on Hollywood. It's a vague concept. Ask these assholes, the next time you hear someone say, oh, those Hollywood people, say, who are you talking about? Well, you know, the people in Hollywood. Oh, okay, asshole. Well, what does that mean? Nobody fucking knows. But when you watch this movie, it's like, okay, now you can say Hollywood cleans its own ass. Like Hollywood is taking, you don't see the fucking police in this country when they're putting people in prison wrongly. You don't see them holding themselves a fucking accountable. Yet this Hollywood fucking movie is holding its own company, its own industry, I should say, accountable. So there, assholes. So, the food industry, when it's revealed like they've fucking poisoned people or whatever the fuck, you don't see people losing their jobs. But the Hollywood industry, the film industry, cleans its own ass. And of course, the average fuckhead civilian will never give us credit. That's it. Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Mike's Instant Movie Review. She said.